Back to live from Paris. It's time now for business news with Matthew Warren. He joins me now. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, Lorna.
So we're going to start off with the International Monetary Fund. They say the crisis is not yet over.
No, that's right. A bit more tinkering going on with their growth forecasts, and as seems to always be the case these days, the tinkering is in a downward direction. Let me show you what they are saying about growth for this year. It says that globally growth will be 3.5%, but of course that doesn't really tell us a lot because there's so much behind those numbers. The Eurozone, it says, will contract by 0.2% in 2013, but at the other end of the scale, China is likely to have 8.2% growth. That's better than it achieved in 2012. Well, the chief economist at the IMF, Olivier Blanchard, he was using almost literary language to summarise the situation the world economy faces.
Should be under no illusions. There remains considerable challenges ahead, and the recovery, this will be clear when you see the numbers, continues to be slow, indeed much too slow. So put poetically, we may have avoided the cliffs, but we still face high mountains.
Well, those figures might help sharpen those discussions at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And France 24's business editor, Marcus Carlson, is there, rubbing shoulders with the great and the good, of course. And we can go and join him live now in Switzerland. There he is with a suitably snowy type of scene. Good morning, Marcus. Good to see you now.
I'm not really sure if I'm rubbing shoulders with the great and good. At least I'm in the same room sometimes.
Well, that's good to know. Now, we've been looking at these latest forecasts from the IMF this morning. What's the mood down there about the global economy?
Well, as you've been saying, we did hear from the International Monetary Fund on Wednesday, and we also heard from its head, Christine Lagarde. She warned that the number one risk in the global economy comes from developed economies like the United States, like Japan, and of course from the Eurozone. The same kind of story that we have seen in the past year, really. And to get another take on that, I'm joined here in our Davos studio by Dr. Nariman Behravesh, who is the chief economist at IHS. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. What do you make of Christine Lagarde's assessment that it is the developed economies that make up the number one risk?
I think that's right. And a lot of it's political risk in terms of what's going to happen in the Eurozone, what's going to happen in the U.S. And of course, in the U.S., the big question has to do with the negotiations in Congress and how that will go. So far, so good. In Europe, we have elections in Italy, in Germany. So the big question is sort of how does that sort of pan out? How does that affect the negotiations over sovereign debt? So I think it's those political risks that we worry about. That said,
Joe
the good
will do
news
it
is the U.S. is beginning to recover. China is beginning to sort of grow again. And I think even in the Eurozone, we think the recession will probably be over in the first quarter, at the latest the second quarter. So I think the tone of things is improving in the world economy.
I want to hone in on the United States in particular. That is where you're based. What do you make of the haggling on Capitol Hill? We have seen Congress raise the debt ceiling for another 3 months, which I suppose leaves some breathing space for more political argument between the Democrats and the Republicans. What do you make of the political risks more specifically there?
Well, it's very, very silly, to be perfectly honest. This is a manufactured crisis. You know, there's nothing about the fiscal cliff that was inevitable. There's nothing about the debt ceiling that's inevitable. And clearly the U.S. has to deal with its fiscal problems. We know that. But this is a very stupid way to do it in terms of these sort of manufactured crises. They're really self-made. So hopefully, you know, the developments in the environment will be such that they can have a productive discussion about how exactly to reduce the U.S. deficit and debt, which is desperately needed, of course.
What about the Eurozone? You have a carefully optimistic attitude when it comes to the Eurozone in 2013.
Well, certainly the biggest risks seem to have abated in the sense that, and this is largely thanks to what the European Central Bank has done in terms of reducing the financial risks in the Eurozone. Now, of course, the challenge is growth. I think the big challenge going forward is can the governments, and with obviously with in cooperation with the EU, put together programs and policies that will bring about growth, especially in Southern Europe, where it's, the situation is pretty terrible.
What do you make of David Cameron's pledge yesterday to hold a referendum in 2017 on Britain's EU membership? Is that going to create the economic uncertainty that some of David Cameron's critics say?
Well, it's certainly a very odd way to do this. You announce it, but then you say you're not going to do it for 5 years. In those 5 years, the uncertainty, especially for British businesses, is huge. Are they going to be inside? Are they going to be outside? So I think this is a very strange way to do this. I can kind of understand the point of view of the Cameron government in terms of wanting to perhaps renegotiate some of the terms of EU membership, but this seems like a very strange way to do it.
All right, Nariman Baravesh from IHS, thanks very much indeed. And we'll, of course, be hearing from David Cameron here this Thursday in Davos, alongside Angela Merkel, another political headliner this Thursday when it comes to growth here in Europe, of course. And with that, I'm going to leave it back to you in the studio.
OK, Marcus, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Davos. Marcus Carlson there, staying warm, we hope. Matthew, let's move on now and have a look at the markets this Thursday. How are they doing?
Yes, well, let's take a look at European markets. Those have just opened up this Thursday morning, and they're not moving a huge amount. London FTSE up very slightly. Now, a couple of bit of news out of Europe. Spanish unemployment figures out. It's up again, I'm afraid, now just over 26%. And from Germany, the bank there, Commerzbank, has announced that it's cutting between 4,000 and 6,000 jobs. That's out of a total workforce of 56,000, so big cuts there. Asian markets, let's just take a look at how things wrapped up in the Thursday trading session. Now, the Nikkei did pretty well. The yen lost a bit of value, and that tends to be good for exporters, but the other markets all slipping back there.
OK, well, we're going to move back to here in France now, Matthew, because angry workers in the car industry were protesting on Wednesday.
Yes, now workers at both Renault and Peugeot Citroën have got axes to grind with their respective managements. And on Wednesday, now this is the scene that took place. Now these are actually Peugeot Citroën workers storming into a Renault plant. They're sort of teaming up there and showing solidarity. Both companies announcing plans to cut jobs as they struggle with this slump in European car sales. Now, when it comes to Renault, blackmail is the word that is being used by unions there. That's how they're describing plans by the company to increase working hours and freeze salaries as well. Well, Renault disagrees with that. They say it's not blackmail, that they are trying to improve competitiveness at its French plants. So this report on that from Claire Murphy.
Scenes of industrial unrest once more in France's troubled car industry. Striking workers at this Renault factory northwest of Paris were joined on the picket line by workers from rival manufacturer Peugeot. They want to show support for the employees engaged in a face-off with management. There have been walkouts at many of Renault's sites, and in the latest developments, unions claim they have documentary proof they're being blackmailed by company bosses, who warn at least 2 factories will close if workers fail to agree cost-cutting measures. The company is asking for more workforce flexibility, increased working hours from 1,500 annually to 1,600, a wage freeze and a loss of 7,500 jobs.
It's blackmail. It's shameful.
If you don't sign, you're fired.
The French government yesterday lined up alongside the workers. It retains a 15% stake in the car maker.
We won't accept any hint of blackmail. That's what we've said before.
The company, though, strongly denies the use of heavy-handed tactics.
During normal negotiations, you discuss things, but every time you make a demand and there's the downside of having this rejected, and then it's presented as blackmail, then there's no negotiation possible.
Renault has forecast positive cash flow for 2012. But last week, the company also reported a 6.3% fall in sales last year to 2.5 million units, due to a 1/5 collapse in European orders.
Claire Murphy there. Well, thanks very much indeed, Matthew, for that look at today's business news. The international weather's coming up next here on France 24, then Stuart Norval will be here with more headlines, so do stay tuned.